Hello everyone and welcome back to another Wizard101 video. Today I've been thinking on for a while, what shall I do? What shall I talk about today? And keeping in line with talking about features about the game and what I'd like to see changed, I thought I would talk about another one, except this time in a more positive light. I feel like the last few videos have been a bit negative. Today I'm going over a bit more positive and a bit more hopeful for the future, and that is I think that side worlds and side areas are really missing from Wizard 101 right now, and I want to talk about why I think that's important, why I think it's really a good idea to have them, and why I really miss them. So without further ado, let's get into it. So starting off, if for some reason you don't know what I mean by side area, there's two different types of side things I would consider in this game. There are full streets, and then there are areas slash dungeons. A full street hasn't really been done in a very long time. For full streets, I would consider Colossus Boulevard and Triton Underwater to be full street length quests that are side quests that you can choose whether you want to do or not. I consider them to be really fun, but you don't have to do them. They're just fun little quest lines that you can choose whether or not you want to do. But this isn't all. There are also side areas, which are things like the Tale of Four Dungeons. We have Kensington Park, which is a really old one that some people might not remember. They have the Tomb of the Beguiler. Different areas which are not necessarily a full side quest, but it's like a side area, specifically out of the way. Then there's also side worlds like Grizzleheim, Wintertusk, and Wisteria. Now, why am I going over this? Why do I think these are important? Well, for the longest time now, and I would say this is about, it's been a while, KingsIsle hasn't really released one of these side areas, side worlds. They had the Catacombs, which was close, but let's be honest, all that was a few boss fights that, had some decently hard cheats that you could choose to do or not. Really not something I would consider to be on the same level as these other areas. Now, what makes these areas so special and why do I think they should continue them? First, let's talk about areas. The areas in the game, like Kensington Park and Tomb of the Beguiler, were interesting because they were challenging, especially for the level around when you unlocked them. Kensington Park, back in the day, I remember trying that at level 20, level 30 when I was in Marleybone and being like, oh my god, what is this? Why is this so challenging? And I think really it's interesting to add different things like that and kind of give your players a challenge that they can choose to do or not. Also, it gives a fun way to add a little badge and potentially a few gear drops to an area. That's just really interesting, really cool, and I wish we could see more like that. For side streets, and this hasn't been done in a really long time, but it's something I'd really like to see, is to add a side street and a full quest line. I think this is really interesting because it lets you explore worlds in different types of ways. It lets you expand and create new characters that may not have been there before, and also really just generally expand the world. What I think is really cool about side streets is that you could also retroactively add them to worlds. So, for example, and this would be really cool to me, is something like Pirate 101, where in Pirate 101 you go back to, say, Port Regal in Skull Island, and you just chill out there for a bit and do 10 or so quests. I think that would be really cool if they could add something like that to Wizard 101. Maybe not necessarily in the main quest line, but a side street that you can choose to go back to if you want to. This would be really cool and a really good idea, where KingsIsle has said in the past they want players to relive the experience and to experience worlds as they are and not just rush through the game. I think it would be really cool if they added something that we would go back to a world and experience the world again for what it is. I think this would be especially cool in somewhere like Marleybone or somewhere like Mushu, just somewhere that you could add really an interesting new side street that players can choose to go back and do if they want to. Just really interesting ideas to expand upon. And finally, we have full side worlds. Now, this is probably one of the most important part of this video, and what I would like to see the most is I think that we really need more side worlds. We obviously have Grizzleheim and Wintertusk, which were very decently long worlds and were added a very long time ago, back pre-2012, whatever. Wisteria was also added a very long time ago, also a side world unlocked at around level 20. And I think that they were really interesting and really dynamic worlds that allowed your character to maybe not only gain a few levels, but also experience a new experience that they could choose to go out of their way to experience it if they want to or not. And I think this is really important, and definitely is something that they need to add to the game, is an aspect of choice. Is, can I go to these side worlds if I want to? What side worlds can I go to? Can I do this? Can I do this? Overall, just really a cool way to expand their game in ways that they haven't really in the past. So, now that I've gone over that, what would I specifically like to see that I definitely think is important? Now, I've kind of already gone over some of it, but just to kind of reiterate, I think it would be really cool if they added more side streets to the game. I, again, think it would be really cool if we could go back to previous worlds, but even in future worlds, I think it would be really cool if we could see some side streets and side areas that you don't necessarily have to do, but expand upon the world in interesting ways. I know side quests already do this, but a whole other street is a really interesting idea and adds a new quest line to the game that you can choose to do or not. I think Colossus Boulevard and Triton Underwater have always been like some really cool areas in my opinion, and have really cool quest lines, and it's a shame because not a lot of people do them, and I think it would definitely be cool to add some more interest to these areas, to add some more areas in general, and kind of expand upon what we have. As for side dungeons, I definitely think the Catacombs was not really all that it was lived up to be, and really was a little bit of a disappointment. I think that it was attempting to do what the 4 dungeons did, but really just didn't work out in the same way, and I think the reason for that is really the aesthetic and the area. I think that really it just doesn't look good, and like having something in the sewers is never going to work out in your favor in my opinion. I think if you've ever played The Elder Scrolls Oblivion, that's always been my least favorite quest lines, is going into the sewers and like trudging through, finding your way, all that stuff. It's just not fun, and I think that it really wasn't all that it was lived up to be, and a lot of the bosses were not necessarily insanely difficult, but were just generally tedious, and that's my least favorite kind of enemy. So what I would like to see is to see more side areas like, say, Darkmoor, Zigzag, Barkingham, areas that have genuinely interesting quest lines and maybe drop a little bit of gear as an added bonus, but they don't even have to drop gear. Just areas that I could choose to go to and farm if I want to, or just to have fun, you know? I think some of these areas would be really cool, and I know that, like, in my opinion, Zigzag and Darkmoor are both really cool dungeons. I mean, I didn't say Kimbalung, but Kimbalung is as well, Buckingham Palace is as well. All really interesting dungeons, and really were, in my opinion, some of the peak Wizard 101 content. And that was released back in 2015. I think it would be really cool if we saw something like that again. Maybe, you know, like a side area in Mushu that we could do. Something just really that gives lower levels something to do, but also higher levels something to do if they decide that they want to. Finally, we have side worlds. The reason why I would like to see more side worlds, and this is definitely important in my opinion, is not necessarily XP, but just giving us something that we can explore in its entirety. I know back when I was a kid, Grizzleheim was always just such a cool area. It wasn't a main area, it was a little side area that I could choose to go off and explore if I wanted to, that had rich in-depth lore and different areas to explore. Just really a cool world, and I felt the same way about Wisteria. I always loved Wisteria as a kid, and I think it's really a shame that they don't have more areas like that in the game, especially at a higher level, because really the side worlds we have right now are Grizzleheim at level 20, then we have Wintertusk at level 40, and then we have Wisteria at level 20 as well. I think that all of these are severely underleveled, and I think it would be really cool if we got a higher level world at, say, maybe level 100, maybe level 120, maybe even level 80, something like that, where we could actually go and explore. Obviously we have Aquila, and I forgot to mention Aquila up until this point, but it rings the same way, where Aquila is a side dungeon, and I would like to see more than that, because I think a lot of these side dungeons that have been released were released a very long time ago now, like 7 years now for most of them, and it would be really cool to see them again. So that's really it for today, I think. I think I talked long enough about the different side areas I'd like to see. Let me know what you think. Do you agree? Do you disagree? I know some people would like to see them focus purely on main worlds, but I don't think that's the way to go. I don't think that's the way to expand the game, and it's not the way to make things interesting and dynamic. I think it would be really, really cool if they expanded the game in a way where it's not necessarily just upwards, but it's also outwards as well. Being able to choose different things, do different activities, really just a cool way to do it. And I know that they can pump out these side worlds faster than they could a main world, and that would be really cool as well if they could maybe release, like, you know, a side world halfway through the year, then a main world at some point later on. Not necessarily that, but like, you know, maybe 2 side worlds at the end of the year, something like that, something really interesting and really cool that they could choose to do. So that's really it for today. Let me know what you think in the comments below, but thank you all for watching. I will see you in the next video. Adios.